Hello, my name is Terry Lilly, and I'm a marine biologist here on the island of Kauai. In the last couple years, I've discovered the worst coral disease to ever hit the Hawaiian Islands. Scientists around the state have come to Kauai to help me with this project, from the people at University of Hawaii, NOAA, and the USGS. What we've discovered that there's a lot of digging that's been going on in our wetlands. A lot of the mud may be toxic that's flowing out into the sea. Now that we've got our funds together to do the marine toxin testing in the Honolulu Bay and over at Anini, we waited for a nice calm day with my dive crew and went out on our flat bottom boat out of the Honolulu River. We had to wait for a number of weeks to find a real calm day to where we could dive down and actually take these marine samples. The Honolulu River, as you can see here, is clogged. So much mud and sediment is built up in the river you can barely get out of the river mouth. We believe this mud and sediment contains dangerous chemicals, and that is why we've set out to do this marine toxic testing. On behalf of all of the people that enjoy Honolulu Bay, from surfers, swimmers, kayakers, and the tourists, we hope we can find out what's going on underneath the waves that's killing the reef. Okay, we're at Honolulu Bay here, out at the bowl in the middle of the bay, and these are testing jars sent over by Test America, and if you notice they have a seal on them, so we can show that this case has not been opened. What I'm going to do with Rick and my other dive buddies here, and we're taking video underwater, I'm going to get 2 of these sample jars, go down to the bottom, fill them up with mud, bring them back up to the surface, and then we put custody tape on them. This is a chain of custody, so when these samples go to Test America, they can safely say what type of toxins that they find in the mud here in Honolulu Bay. Whether it be pesticides, dioxins, or heavy metals, we want to make sure that everyone realizes this test was done with proper chain of custody and is completely valid. Oh, here, this is good. These are the tags for each individual bottle that we're going to fill out when we do the test. So these are the little testing jars here, and we're going to go fill these up, mud samples, and we're taking samples right on the bottom, right next to where the mud is on the reef here with the dying and infected coral that has a cyanobacterial coral disease. And so what we're going to do is do these samples and test to see what chemicals may be in them. So I'm going to go down to the bottom just a minute. Rick's filming in the water. And we're going to do several samples at each site here. As I ascend down to the bottom of the bay at Honolulu, right off of the reef, the first thing I notice is a large deposit of mud that's built up on the seafloor. The water visibility down here is very poor. The water clarity and visibility used to be really good in Honolulu Bay. Now this mud that's flown out of the Honolulu River has deposited a thick layer on the seafloor. I take the individual jars and scoop up some mud in 2 different areas very close to each other, while Rick, my dive buddy, is taking videos of me taking the samples. One of the reasons we do this is just to show where we're taking each sample and how professionally we're doing the study, so no one will ever think that anything got added to the samples or that they weren't taken in the proper areas. Once we've taken our samples, I slowly ascend back to the boat where we will process them. Mike here is taking the samples that I just brought up from the seafloor and labeling each one of them, so we know what time and date the samples were taken and where they were taken at. As you can see, it's very time-consuming taking these samples, so we speeded it up a little bit here so it's not too boring to watch. Once the samples have been processed, then we get back in our dive gear and go up the coastline to Anini. There's a golf course up above the bluff here at Anini, and we suspect that some of the chemicals used on the golf course could leach out into the bay and be killing the corals. We're at Anini at the river mouth, about 100 yards offshore, and the coral disease has killed most of the rice corals in this area. We're taking samples in about 10 feet deep of water in the Anini little creek mouth right here, and we're going to do like the last one. We're going to do 4 jars of sampling here right within a few feet of each other, and mark those down and put the safety seal on them, seal of custody, and put them in the cooler to be shipped to Test America. So we're just going to jump in and do these samples. We don't need scuba dive because it's shallow here, so just free diving. And then Rick's over there, he's going to be shooting video underwater. Just like in the Honolulu Bay, we dive down and take the samples from the seafloor inside of these glass jars. Rick is shooting the video, and Raj is shooting the video off of the boat, just so we can verify once again when and where the samples were taken. We want to take these samples very near the surface of the seafloor, very close to the reefs where we've had a massive coral die-off. This way we can try to figure out what it is that may be on the corals at the current present time that's killing them. We also intend to take samples down the road much deeper in the sediment layer, which can give us a history of chemicals that may have run off the land over the years. We choose areas, once again, for the sampling because they are close to the areas where we've had the most amount of coral disease caused by the cyanobacterial infections. And this infection may be spreading quickly because of chemicals in the water and the sediment. This is what we need to find out. And being it's deeper water, scuba diving, we can't go up and down with each sample. So I'm going to take all 4 samples, Rick's videoing on the bottom, and put them in my mesh bag and bring them all up at the same time for it to seal and Mike to put the labels on. We drop down to the bottom about 40 feet deep at this next sample site that's considerably far off the coastline outside of Anini area. As soon as we drop down, the first thing I notice is many large infections of the cyanobacteria killing the rice corals. These are these big round patches. It kills the coral at a very rapid rate, up to about 4 inches a week, whereas these corals only grow 4 inches a year. The sediment I'm wiping away is on top of the dead coral that's been killed by the bacteria. So this is the next site here where we're taking samples. We're further out in the ocean, so we don't expect to find as much mud and sediment on the seafloor. But we also didn't expect to find the coral disease this far out. So this was somewhat mysterious. I had been to this site previously or nearby and didn't find any coral disease out at this depth. So finding it today was really kind of a bad thing, but I'm glad we're there to take the current tests to see what's going on out under the waves on the reef. Okay, we're at the beautiful Hanalei River here, right near the mouth of the river, and we're going to continue our testing with Test America. So we're breaking the custody seal and taking out the test sample jars. And then once we do the samples, like all the other samples, we're going to put them into containers and coolers to ship to Test America, and we're going to do that with all the proper chain of custody. So we've got 2 sample jars we're doing at Hanalei River, right close to each other. I'll do one a little further out and one inside in here. Creek here. It drains down right from the Princeville Golf Course. And yesterday we did the sampling of the boat out in the middle of Anini Bay out there about 10 feet deep. So now we're going to do 4 jars full, 2 separate samples from right here in the little creek area to see what we find. Once we've got done taking the samples from out at Hanalei Bay, Anini, and Sea Lodge, and also the samples that we took in the Anini Creek and Hanalei River, then we meet back up at our research center to package all the samples to ship them off to Test America. This is a temperature blank here, and the temperature blank helps the lab know what temperature the inside of the container is when they receive it on Tuesday. So we put the temperature blank right in here between the samples. Then the samples go inside here. Each individual spot has its own bag. Then we tie all this up, and then once we've tied it all up and got it ready, then we'll go ahead and put ice in here and seal the container. Once the container's sealed, it's going to have a custody seal on it, so if anyone opens this container between the time when I seal it up right now and take it to the airport, then they know that someone could potentially have tampered with the container here, and we don't want that to happen. Once we have the packages all prepared with a custody seal, then we'll drive them into La Hui and ship them over to California to the Test America labs. Being that we are looking for a number of different toxins in these samples, Test America will need to actually send different parts of each sample off to different labs. The dioxin testing may be done in one lab, where atrazine may be done in a different lab. It's going to take Test America 3 to 4 weeks to analyze all the samples and get back to us with a report. If they come back with chemicals in the samples, then we were going to have to go back out and do more detailed tests at each site to see how widespread the chemical contamination is, and to see if it also directly relates to the die-off of the reef. If we don't find many chemicals in the sample site, then we know that we have to look somewhere else for scientific information leading us to the cause of this coral disease that's ravaging the north shore of Kauai. One way or another, it's all good science that needs to be done, and the public needs to know what's going on under the surf in Hanalei Bay and Anini.